Hi, I'm Scott Morris, and welcome to Classical Guitar Complete. Now, normally what I do in these videos, which are based on concepts in my book, Classical Guitar Complete from Basics to Bach, is I'll take a particular piece of music and then I'll explain how to make it a little bit easier to approach technically, or maybe it's a musical thing. But in this video, I'm going to do something a little bit different. Here, I'm really going to talk about a concept. And this is going to be the concept of position scales all over the fretboard. And I know that's nothing new, especially if you play electric guitar or study jazz or something like that. But a lot of classical guitar players don't take this approach to the guitar. And I'd really like to kind of make the case for taking this position scale approach to the guitar as a way not only to learn the fretboard a little bit better, but to improve your sight reading, to improve the speed with which you can learn pieces, and also just to honestly get people practicing scales maybe a little bit more than they do. So in chapter 8 of my book, I go through and I present 5 scale patterns, and in the first part they're all in C major. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to play each one here in C major, and I've given them numbers. I'm going to talk a little bit about transposition, how to approach scales in sort of a general technical way, what the benefits are. But then I'm going to take a little piece, just a little Carcassi piece from Opus 59, and just show you how you can take, using these little position scales, whatever part of the music you like and play it all over the fretboard, just as an exercise, but also maybe to get away from always having your default position be the one closest to the headstock here. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'd like to do is just go through and play each of the scales so you can see what I'm talking about here. So this is on page 82 of my book. So here's pattern 1. Okay, and then descending. And you can go down and finish there, but I really try to go and start and stop on C. That's why I went all the way up to C here, just to not stop on G here. But really the focus there was first position, and that's one most of us are pretty familiar with. So that's pattern 1, first position. Pattern 2, right, that's really the position. And then just to go get that C, just so your ear hears C. And of course you can get the rest of the notes in that position. Just get all the natural notes, so no sharps, no flats. So there's pattern 2, 2 octave C major. Pattern 3, start there. A lot of people start this on A. You can think of this as A minor if you like, but I'm starting on C here on purpose. So that's mostly 5th position, 1 string. The 3rd string is in 4th position there. So that's pattern 3. Pattern 4, 7th position, again just C major. Right, you can include the D here and the B here just to get all the notes in that key. But I like to start and end on C just because it's good for your ear. That's pattern 4, so 7th position, C major. Pattern 5, the final one here. There's C right there, but I have to go up to the F and then back off, and then go back down to C. Just get all the notes in that position. Okay, so we'll come back to each of these in just a minute, but I like to practice these as well as segovia scales. I'm going to talk about segovia scales here in a bit, and I also like to practice other types of scales, chromatic scales, whole tone scales, diminished scales, all sorts of different things. Because I think it's not only good technically, but it really helps in learning the fretboard. So I think fundamentals and theory and all of that needs to be part of your sort of complete approach to the guitar. But the number one, to be honest, reason why you cannot avoid practicing scales, if for no other reason, is technically it's just fantastic for you. And what makes practicing scales so important, so effective, is more than any other technique you can work on, it really requires you to synchronize your hands, meaning your hands have to work together nearly perfectly. Unlike, say, if you're playing, Giuliani arpeggios, which a lot of us spend a lot of time doing that, and one of the hands is more or less stationary, right? Or if you have, slurs or whatever it might be, then this hand is obviously doing more than this hand. But scales, each hand is really sort of equally responsible for what's going on. So it's great for practicing synchronization. A couple little things I might just mention you should cover when you're practicing scales. Number one is really working on this idea of synchronization. And what I like to do here, let's say I'll just take, maybe pattern 4 here, 7th position, is as I'm going through, I like to talk about planting a lot. So here I'm actually planting both left hand and right hand together. So I pluck that first note there, that C, and then I'm going to put down, say, M over here. At the exact same time, I put down 4, which is going to be the next finger there, that D, and then I'm going to put 1 down here on the 5th string and I down over here. So I'm just putting them down and I'm pausing on it. Now, what I want to try to avoid is having one finger go down like that and then that. See, that way the right hand got ahead, or if I go that, they're out of sync. Those are really obvious. For most people, it's much more subtle than that, but you really want to make them really in sync. One of my teachers, when I was a kid, I can't remember who said this, but he said you can think about almost like a puppet, like a string puppet. And I used to think about as you move the finger over here, that you're moving that finger there. If you think about almost like a string marionette puppet there. It's a nice little image to have to really kind of bring your hands together. A couple other things I think you really want to focus on. Rhythmic variations are fantastic. If you're doing your little. So a lot of people, they just want to get right in there and start playing fast scales. But it's better if you can. Oops. So then you're playing a slow one, slow one, fast one, and you're not just throwing a bunch of fast ones out there when it can get kind of messy. So controlling it with rhythmic variations. I like to practice triplets, 16th notes, 8th notes, quintuplets, groups of 5. Anything I can think of. I like to do it with a metronome, and it's not even really about trying to play as fast as possible. It's about trying to play as clean as possible. So that's really what you want to focus on. Now, the 5 patterns, I don't mean these to in any way take the place of segovia scales. I think segovia scales, I make all of my students learn the segovia scales at the university. The difference is these are the scales in, say, like a C major first, C major 7th position here. Right, just in one position. You can really burn on that if you want. Segovia, that very same scale, he does that. So it's shifting. Shifting is what makes the segovia scales so useful. If you think about that A melodic minor 3-octave segovia scale, or the 3-octave G major segovia scale, which is actually different on the way down than it is on the way up, same with the melodic minor, then you start to see that it's a totally different thing you're practicing. So those are much more complex. The scales I'm telling you about, these are your working tools. Okay. All right. So here's what I'd like to do. This is the exercise. I'm going to move to page 85 in my book. This is the little Allegretto, Opus 59 by Carcassi. I'm going to play the piece the way most people would play it, just on first glance. And then through using this 5-pattern scale approach, I'm going to show you some other ways you can look at the piece, either as an exercise or maybe just to get a different sound in your tone. All right, so here's the little Allegretto, Opus 59 by Carcassi, in mostly first position here. Okay, so really straightforward there. This is a great piece to look at if you're, really working on that first position, what I call pattern 1 here in C major. Now, here's the exercise. I'm going to just focus on the first few measures, and then I'm going to go and play the same thing using all of the other patterns. And what you can see here is this will start to kind of free you up from first position if you're stuck in first position as far as your note reading goes. Okay, so let me just play the first few measures, pattern 1. Okay, so that's based on pattern 1, C major. Now, pattern 2, just a quick review. Right there, just thinking about the left hand here. Now, I would play, right, just to, do just the first few measures here. That's the same as, okay, so pattern 2, exact same notes. But you'll start to notice it has a slightly different sound. A little bit warmer. The closer you are down here, the brighter your sound's going to be. You can also start to get a little bit of vibrato. It's easier to get vibrato on that, fingering for C than that one. Is tough right down there. Okay. Keep moving up here. So if I move up to, say, pattern 3, exact same thing there, so pattern 3. Okay, so here's C. Okay, so you see how that works. Move up to pattern 4. So this is good old pattern 4. That's the same C. You've always got to make sure you're starting in the right place. So there's C, C, C. So I'm not changing the octave. Register is the same. But now I can play. Okay? Really different sound. You get a lot of vibrato. More than down. Right? Even more than there. Okay? And then, pattern 5, the last one here, you can really move this up here, so really a different sound. Right then, that. And you could go through the whole piece like this. You can go through all of your pieces like this. So, practice your sight reading, go through, try playing something in the first position, then maybe try the same thing in second position, 4th, 5th position, 7th position, 9th, 10th position, and just get used to moving all over the fretboard. It gets you, it frees you up from a lot of things guitar players get stuck in. For instance, a lot of guitar players, they get kind of lost down around here, so they do a lot of first string. I had an old teacher called that the one-string samba, where you're kind of jumping around on the first string because you know those notes and you're not so comfortable with these here. Well, this will get you to kind of explore here a little bit more. As I mentioned, this is also great for sight reading. Sight reading is one of those things that can be so difficult on the guitar, mostly because you have so many choices. Do I play the C here? Do I play the C here? Do I play the C here? Well, yes, yes, and yes. You should practice moving it all over the fretboard. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is transposition, and this is something I'm sure most of you are pretty familiar with. Anyway, but just to cover everything. So take something like, I don't know, that pattern 4, C major. So here you've got 2 octaves C major, right? And if I just move that down a fret, that C here gives you that C major scale. Start on B, play the exact same pattern, and I've got a B major scale. Right, move it down here, you get G major and whatever, you move it all over the fretboard. You should get used to practicing all 5 patterns all through the circle of fifths. I like to just go straight through the circle of fifths, covering sharp keys, covering flat keys. Also, practice sight reading in other keys and always identify what the pattern is. And you start to notice things, even like a very famous, like, right, everybody knows that. That's actually pattern 1, E minor, but you think G major, start to see these little patterns everywhere, all over the fretboard. So it makes learning your music easier as well, because you can start to give names to things. Pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3, G major, D major, whatever it might be. So just a little something to think about here as far as scale patterns go, and how you can approach them first technically, but then how you can use them to make learning the fretboard and learning your music a little bit easier. So I hope you've found this useful. And I might also just throw in one little plug here. Volume 2 of Classical Guitar Complete is going to be coming out in early 2012. And I'm going to go, for the first few chapters, deeper into this sort of pattern-based approach to learning the classical guitar. Hope to see you in future videos. Take care.